BFS. I've been mentioning it a lot. I've been getting tons of questions. What the is BFS? Well, tiny little baits, light little rods, dope reels designed to throw these tiny little baits. This is a technique that's been out for many years now. And at first, I'll admit that I was a little skeptical. Small baits, small fish. But now that I am in and I am committed, I absolutely have fallen in love with BFS fishing. So today, we are going to break down the gear that we use, some of our favorite baits, so that if you are just getting started in BFS or you're curious about BFS fishing, you're going to know where to start and what to do. So if you guys are ready, let's do it. Welcome to the Hookup Tackle. The Hookup Tackle is the world's largest showcase of Megabass products, featuring baits and colors not found at any other dealer. The Hookup also offers a wide display of OSP, Evergreen, Deps, Lucky Craft, Jackal, and many more. The Hookup Tackle is owned and operated by family, is staffed by guides and verified tackle nerds who love helping anglers elevate their craft. If you're in the Phoenix area, we'd love to have you stop by our showroom and check out the wonderful world of Megabass and the Hookup for yourself. If you shop online, there are almost 10,000 SKUs of Megabass products alone, with hundreds of other companies and new products being added daily. So next time you're looking for that hard-to-find bait, that color your fish have never seen before, or maybe you just want to elevate your game, look at thehookuptackle.com. Welcome back, my friends. I'm Ben with the Hookup Tackle, aka the Tackle Otaku, being filmed by my buddy Jeffrey the King. We are the Hookup Tackle USA. Okay, today we are going to do, I don't know, Jeff, what is this? Our top 10 favorite baits and
something like that.
Stuff you need. We're basically going to break down the stuff that we use all the time for BFS fishing. Now, if you don't know what BFS stands for, it stands for Bait Finesse System. Now, this is basically a technique of throwing really light, really small baits, light line, light rods on bait casting type stuff versus on spinning stuff that maybe traditionally guys would throw it on. Now, this is not a new system, but what's happened over the last few years is JDM brands are driving this whole system really strong. And in Japan, trout fishing is skyrocketing in popularity. So some of these big bass brands like Megabass, OSP, Lucky Craft, Duo, right? They are fighting for their share of the trout market. And so they're bringing all this great high-end technology into these tiny little baits, and they're becoming more and more prevalent. And even though maybe they're designed for trout, it doesn't matter. They're going to catch any predatory fish. Jeff and I have been throwing them all winter here for largemouth and for smallmouth, and it's just a blast to fish this way. Now, when this stuff first started becoming popular, right? To me, I just thought, man, this is just such nonsense, because I was hardcore in tournament fishing, trophy fishing, and all I could think about was catching big fish, right? And this BFS idea just seemed like, small bait, small fish. But what BFS actually does when you get your stuff dialed in is it opens up a whole new adventure to you. You're able to fish baits and techniques and waterways that maybe you've never been able to fish before, and it's a whole new world, right? All of a sudden we're using light whippy rods, light line, 3 pound, 4 pound test, little tiny hooks, little baits, and we are at the mercy now of nature again. And even a small fish is a big fish on this little gear. So I'm really excited to share what knowledge that we know, and let me be the first one to point out, I am not a multi-decade expert at BFS fishing, because as I explained, I thought it was kind of dumb in the beginning. But now I'm totally sold, I'm committed. We have dove way into this, and I'm just gonna share my findings on what works, what we enjoy fishing, how we do it, so that you guys can get started down the right path. Now, there are so many baits on the market that there's no possible way I could talk about every one. So this won't be the last BFS video. we'll continue to drop more and more things as more cool new baits come out, more new techniques we discover or figure out. But this is kind of, if you're starting from ground zero and you're starting from scratch and want to assemble all the gear you need to experience this new world, we're going to show you everything that you need to get started. So let's start with hard baits. Well, actually, let's kind of think this through for a minute, okay? So basically, I break down my BFS world into a hard bait, soft bait category. So, we've been doing a lot of shore fishing, small stream, little river, tight quarters type stuff that BFS allows us to access this new world, right? I don't know that this is a technique that I would necessarily, put into some of our bigger water, right? Like I go out to Lake Mead or Lake Havasu, I'm not necessarily throwing, these tiny little baits. I could use normal bass stuff. But to create new adventures and new places, this is totally the right thing to do. So for me, I've got one rod and reel and line ready for my hard baits. I've got one rod, reel, and line ready for my soft baits. And I can just kind of bing, bang, boom, just bounce around and do different things. So we're going to kind of break this down into hard baits, soft baits, okay? So starting in hard baits. Now, naturally, the natural place to go with hard baits is into like a hard jerk bait, because every brand that we just mentioned, they're all fighting for that kind of trout jerk bait segment, that smaller body jerk bait. So this is generally where I begin. Now, again, there's so many options, right? So play with them, try some different things out. But for me, my starting point is almost always one of these Great Hunting type baits. Now, Great Hunting is Megabass's trout brand. They come in a bunch of different varieties. For me, I kind of live here in the Great Hunting Flatside 50 and Flatside 45. Now, what I love about Great Hunting baits is that they come in a floating and a fast sinking option, okay? So what that means to me is if I'm fishing current, right? So if I'm fishing a small stream, a creek, a little river, something like that, or it could be a big river, and I need the bait to land in the current and sink down before it just drifts away from the fish's strike zone, I could go with the fast sink version. If I'm fishing still water, a little pond, a little urban lake, something like that, and I want to fish the bait closer to the surface, then I can go with the floating version. Or maybe I need to keep it up over grass, something like that, I can go with the floating version. Now, here's a look at the Great Hunting. This is the 50 Flatside. Now, as you can see, it is definitely a jerkbait profile, but a lot of times, especially in current, this guy will be used more like a crankbait than a jerkbait. So remember, the smaller these baits are, the more delicate you have to be with your movements, okay? This is not like a 110 where I can throw it out there and just, rip away, right? It's very, very delicate. So most of my movement on this guy is actually going to be on the reel because it's a little more controlled. So a lot of times I'll just throw it out there and kind of even just swim it in like a crankbait. It's going to have a very hard movement to it. It's pretty subtle, does have a little sound to it, right? So it has a little bit of noise and has a real hard, tight vibration. So if I just throw and wind it, I can feel it vibrating down there. If I want it to kind of jerk and dart around, what I'll do is I'll just kind of turn my reel handle and just give it a little crank, little pop like that, and that'll avoid too much movement on the rod. Now, you'll notice that the Great Hunting comes with these kind of crazy wide gap barbless hooks. These hooks are amazing at hooking fish, but again, remember, when you're playing in this realm, these are such lightweight hooks, and a lot of them are designed for trout, very soft mouths, right? So if you catch a lot of fish or you're not super delicate removing them, they are going to be a little bit brittle. So replacement hooks are going to be very important. We'll talk about that here in a minute. So this is a great place to start for me. If I need something a little bit bigger or more of a true suspend, then I'll jump up to the Great Hunting Flatside 70. This is going to be more of a true suspending bait, a little bit bigger, so I can give this a little bit more aggressive jerks and think of this as a true jerk bait. Now, there's also a brand new Great Hunting bait on the market, and this is called the Humpback. So this is just a little higher, a little bit taller, bait than this guy, so it's going to have a different vibration. The original is going to be super fast, so it's going to be a very tight movement. This guy, because it's taller, is going to have more ability to flash. Okay, so it's going to present more of a profile, but it's going to be a little slower. So it's not going to vibrate quite as hard. It's a little more of a neutral kind of vibration. So just a different offering, not a right or wrong. I just kind of pick something and start, and then adjust as I need to adjust. Now the new Humpback comes with more of your traditional, real light wire, round bend, barbed hooks. So, but again, when you're dealing with hooks this small, you're going to get some breakage. It's just the way it is. When you start playing with size 10, size 12, size 14, they're just so delicate, you're going to need to make sure you have replacement hooks on them, okay? All right, kind of staying in that jerk bait realm for a minute. Some other baits that I never leave home without, the Lucky Craft Pointer 65 or Be Free 65. Now, this is a great, just slow suspend jerk bait. So again, if I'm looking for a true jerkbait where I'm going to twitch, twitch, pause, it's generally somewhere in here. Almost always it's somewhere like a Flatside 70 or X-70, Pointer 65, and then sometimes I'll mix in the OSP Durga as well. So all of these are going to be super light, right? These are like 4 gram, 3 gram. So we're talking about like 1/8 ounce to 1/16 ounce type baits. Way too light to throw on any normal bait casting gear. It definitely has to go on BFS gear. All right, staying in hard baits, another bait that I add in to the arsenal quite a bit when there are bass involved or any rocks where I need to kind of bang something around. Lucky Craft makes, of course, the LC crankbait, right? Everybody knows about the LC 1.5, 2.5. Those are staple square bills in bass fishing. Well, a little known one is the LC 0.3. So this is a super small, it's 3 grams, so 1/10 ounce, 1.5 inches long, just a tiny little bait finesse size little square bill that's great for banging around rocks when fish are feeding up shallow and that stuff. So this is always in my arsenal. Some other fun things that I enjoy playing with, Gancraft makes a little tiny jointed claw. This is the Jointed Claw 70. So again, just a super bite-sized little glide bait. It's really too small to truly glide, right? But it's a cool little just kind of jerking type swim bait, comes in sinking and floating. So again, same idea. If I'm fishing current or I want to get that bait down a little bit, I fish the sinking. If I'm fishing still water and I want to fish it higher, closer to the top, I go with the floating. Floating, of course, you can alter by using little weight strips. But generally speaking, that's where I go. I'll just choose the sinker, choose the floating. It's just easier on the fly. Another bait that is really important to bait finesse fishing is another Lucky Craft bait. These are the Lucky Craft areas. Now, this is a little tiny kind of bait finesse spinner bait. They're available in 1/8 ounce and 3/16 ounce, okay? And the areas is basically just this little finesse spinner bait that has a single kind of custom designed blade, and that blade will helicopter on the way down and then vibrate hard as it comes in. So it's just a really finesse, easy, you can just cast and wind, or you can fish it out in deeper water by throwing and kind of yo-yoing and lift and drop. The fish love it. So again, too small to throw on conventional gear, but when they're feeding on little tiny bait, or you're fishing smaller water, it's an amazing way to go. A couple other really fun baits that I like for like surface style fishing. So OSP makes a couple just super dope baits. Start with this one. This is the Bent Minnow. Now I know a lot of you guys love the Bent Minnow. The Bent Minnow has this crazy kind of bent shape to it. So it's got this unique curve. It's a floating bait that as you twitch, it may walk on the surface, it may dart and dive underneath the surface. There's really no rhyme or reason to what it does, but this smaller size is really light. I think it's only 4 grams. Yeah, 4.3 grams. So you're, just over 1/8 ounce. So it's hard to throw, but on BFS stuff, it throws amazingly well. It's just a cool way to catch them when they're feeding on the surface. Another one is the over reel wake. And this is a true finesse wake bait, very slow retrieve, and it just looks incredibly natural, incredibly lifelike. But again, it's too small of a bait to throw on conventional gear, but on the bait finesse, they crush it. Now, staying in top water for a little bit, the Megabass Baby Pop X. is a no-brainer. It's 50 millimeters long, 3/16 of an ounce. So again, more traditionally a spinning rod bait. On the bait finesse, you can chuck it and you got that great popper. You can also throw these little bug baits like the Orikanemushi and that kind of stuff that, you know, most guys aren't going to be able to cast, and you can really pick things apart. Those are both really fun in the BFS stuff. You can also go the opposite way. So a lot of companies are starting to build these smaller little blade baits. So Deps Circuit Vibe, OSP's blade bait, they have a great one as well. But this is a little 1/8 ounce blade bait that you can fish right on the bottom and kind of stroke the same way you would a 1/2 ounce or a larger one in the big bodies of water. But this is a great one for kind of just fishing a little aggressively right on the bottom, just lift and drop. So that thing just vibrates up, falls down, vibrates up and falls down. Really effective in moving water because they're just not used to seeing that kind of action. So definitely one that I keep in my box at all times. All right, really quick, Warrior, on the hard bait topic, you are definitely going to want to get some replacement trebles for these guys, okay? So Owner ST36 is the most universal, like round bend barbed treble for replacing. So these guys come in, you know, size 12, size 10, size 14, I mean, all kinds of little sizes. So there's a size for everything you need. I am really becoming a huge fan of this Kishu Bushin hook. This is that hook that comes on that Great Hunting. It's that real wide gap barbless hook. So if you guys are using this stuff for trout fishing, this is just an amazing hook. I mean, literally, once they bite, you just keep the pressure on and it gets them, right? So as long as it doesn't break, it keeps them pinned, and it's just so nice on the fish. It literally, you land the fish and you just push on it and it falls out. So just a great way of preserving our fish as well, so that we're not really hurting them. So definitely going to want to keep some of these handy, because if you're just jacking them like crazy, you are going to go through some hooks. That's one of the downside of using these little tiny ones, but definitely keep this in mind. Okay, let's dive into soft baits really quick. So again, you can really throw any soft plastic that you can imagine, any technique you can imagine. You can really go super, super small and super light with this. So this is, generally speaking, for me, where I go. Generally, I like to throw the hard baits. I can cover water quicker, I can move faster, but of course, when they're just kind of shut down or a little more neutral and I have to go soft plastic, I certainly will. So this is generally kind of my, like, I'd say kind of top 3 or 4 techniques that I will do. Okay, so first up is I never leave home without the Megabass Hazedong Shad. Okay, now this is the 3-inch size. Doesn't weigh a lot. It's super finessey, very tight. I can pair it up with a little 16th ounce head. So I usually either go with like an Okashira head, or sometimes I will go with a little Zappu bumper head. This is another great one. And this will just give it a little bit more action. It'll have a little bit more movement to it, this head. So if I want a little more life, I'll go bumper head. If I want it to be very tight and finessey, I'll go Okashira head. But that's a great combination all the time, and we can throw it on our bait casting gear, which is dope. Okay, while we're on this kind of bumper head or ball head style, another bait that I throw all the time is the OSP DoLive Stick. Now, for the BFS, it's definitely in a 3-inch size that I'm mainly throwing. Sometimes I'll go to 3.5 if I'm fishing it weightless, like a fluke, then the 3.5 is great. But on a little ball head like this, it could be a little Kitech ball head, the bumper head, whatever you like to use. Ryugi makes a great one as well, called the Vespa, that comes in really light sizes, like 3/64 ounce. The DoLive Stick is amazing because it's just got a lot of versatility to it. So on that little ball head, I can just literally just kind of hop it around and crawl it, and that tail just kind of quivers while it moves and looks just like a little crawdad or minnow that's feeding on the bottom. It's just a very finessey way to fish them up. So definitely one I keep in my arsenal. Okay, another one that's just really easy to fish on BFS gear is a weightless, what's my name? What's my name, bitch? Another one that's just really easy to fish on BFS gear is a Wacky Rig. Now, this is basically my combo for fishing the little Wacky Rig. It's basically like a flick shake, but in a much smaller size. So I'll go with these small little tungsten, like this little 3/32 ounce little tungsten head. All right, and then I'll go with these smaller, like 3.5 inch or 4 inch baits. So like a DoLive crawler, an HP3D Wacky is a no-brainer. And these are just really tiny, really skinny finesse crawler style baits. They're just gonna kind of give just a little quiver as I'm moving it. And it just kind of has that real finesse look to it. But they're money on small bodies of water. Because remember, we're fishing a lot of smaller ponds, smaller creeks, smaller streams, that kind of stuff. So this really finesse type crawler style bait, it will definitely catch them. Now, we can also use these same baits. We can mix in, I like to mix in the Megabass tournament crawler, their little 3.5 inch size. And instead of wacky rigging it, we'll just neko rig it. So we'll use a little tiny nail weight. You're gonna have to go with the smallest nail weight you can find because these plastics are really, really tiny. Little tiny hooks, right? Size 3, size 4, right? And we can just wacky rig it that way as well. So this will give us another just super finessey option in the soft plastic realm that we can utilize. Now, don't be afraid also, you hear us talk about free rig a lot, don't be afraid to free rig things. So just lighten your weight, go to like a 16th ounce, 3/32 ounce, drop down in size like a little 2 inch gill or a little 3 inch little shrimp or even any of those crawlers. You can free rig all of that stuff. So definitely experiment with those things. Okay, another thing that's really important for me in the BFS realm is the small little finesse jig. Okay, so the Valley Hill Devil jig, the OSP Tugger jig, something like this in a 4 gram, a 6 gram, you know, is money. So these little finesse jigs are just really tight and compact. They're made to be like horizontal fishing. So I could throw it up over a limb and I can just kind of lift it up over a limb so it's just kind of quivering up and then falling back down. I can really pick apart cover. Now to the back of these, I usually just add, you know, a smaller bottle shrimp. I could add, you know, the Valley Hill Devil Shaker. I could add the little 2 inch craw. I'm just keeping the whole package down to about 2.5 inches big. So it's super finesse, super easy to cast. But any of those soft plastics will allow you to just pick a place apart. You should have a lot of success on all of that. All right, now let's dive into the actual hardware, the rods, the reels, the line, because this is really the most critical piece, right? You've got to have the right gear or you're not going to be able to throw these tiny little baits, right? So let's start with reels, and we'll go to line, and we'll go to rod. Sound good? Sound good, Jeff?
I think it
Answer
sounds
me,
pretty
Jeff.
good.
Okay, dude, I'm super bougie. So let's just start with where I start. This is, in my opinion, the greatest BFS reel ever. This is the Daiwa Steez Air. If you're familiar with Daiwa, Steez is their, you know, top of the line. This little dude is just mind-blowing what it's capable of doing. You can put one of these little 2 and 3 gram baits and you can throw it as far as you could imagine throw. It's so effortless too. Another reason why I love the Air is it's equally controlled in overhand casting or little sidearm flick, either cross body or sidearm. So from one place on shore, and again, remembering that we're fishing a lot of times from the bank or from a kayak or from really tight little areas, I don't always have the luxury to make these big overhand casts like I would on a big body of water. I need to be able to get in, and I might have trees and brush all around me. I might need to just do a little flick like this, or a little roll like that, or be able to bomb, you know, 10 feet later. This reel can do all of it equally as well. It's got a great drag. You can actually fight fish off the drag, unlike most traditional bait casters where you either give them drag or you don't, right? This guy will fight fish on the drag just like you would a spinning reel. So highly recommended. They come in right hand and left hand, okay? Now, something really important to point out with these smaller reels is that they will usually come in like a 6 or 7 to 1, and then a lot of times you'll see them in like a 9 to 1, right? Don't let that 9 to 1 scare you too much. Because these reels are really small, the spools are small, the handles are small, I mean, it almost feels like a toy, right? That 9 to 1 isn't picking up that much line, right? So it's not like a 9 to 1, you know, Corrado or Zillion or something like that. It's a 9 to 1 tiny reel. So it's more equivalent to like a 7, mid 7, right? Or high 7. So for me, generally speaking, if I'm fishing current and I'm fishing moving water, I like that higher gear ratio. because I can maintain contact even as the current is whipping my bait down. I can keep in contact with my stuff. If I'm fishing, you know, more still water and I need to like twitch and pause, then I'll usually go with the lower gear ratio. But there's not a right or wrong. It's whatever you like and whatever retrieve, right hand or left hand, that you prefer. Now, if you don't want to super bougie it up into the steez, you don't want to drop $600 on a BFS reel, another amazing option in that kind of, you know, half price of that reel is the Daiwa Alphys Airstream Custom. Now, the Alphys Airstream Custom is a beautiful reel. You can see it's kind of that just gorgeous kind of green color. It's got the carbon fiber handle, the cork grips. I mean, it's super sexy. I mean, it looks just like what you would envision as like a small finesse reel to be. It's still going to be made in Japan, so you're going to still get that beautiful refinement. You're still going to get that great castability. It's going to be able to cast and perform virtually the same as that steez. It's just in a larger package, right? So depending on which rod you choose, you may end up having to go with this steez just because it's so light. Or if you go with a little bit heavier rod or a rod that's got a little bit more tip to it, then the Alphys might actually be the better choice for you. But either of those reels would be great. I highly recommend them. Okay, line. Line, this is where it gets kind of crazy, right? So you could certainly take a reel like this and throw 10-pound or 12-pound line on it, and I've spooled them up for guys like that. It's no problem, okay? So if you just want the ability to cast a light bait, but you still want your heavier line or a little bit bigger rod, right? Then these can be great options, right? So a lot of rods now are coming in like a true like medium light taper, like 6'10" to 7-foot rods, like in Destroyer P5, there's Kasumi 6'11", there's the Bait Finesse rod. And everybody's kind of making that longer, lighter weight reaction rod for throwing tiny little crankbaits. So you can certainly go with a BFS style reel like this that will help you cast those lighter baits, but still have some heavier line. You're not gonna get a lot of storage on it, but you can do it. Now for me, when we're talking true bait finesse though, I think for me, part of the system is that we're going lighter line to match the lighter rod, lighter reel, lighter bait. That's part of the adventure, right? So, you know, this is a new experience for us. So if we just go out there with a bunch of heavy line and we haul them bitches in, you know, I mean,
ain't nothing.
Yeah, I mean, we might just use normal shit, right? So for me, I like to play in these lighter lines. Now for me, 3-pound is like my standard. This is like probably 80% of the time I'm throwing like 3 or 4-pound line. If I feel like I'm fishing stuff on the bottom or I need a little more oomph, I'll go to 5, okay? If they're super picky, like especially trout, if you guys are fishing really clear water for trout, then sometimes I'll have to go down to 2-pound, right? Now, here's the thing with light line. If you guys haven't used this little light line before, it's gonna be daunting, like, holy shit, I'm throwing 3-pound fluorocarbon. Like, it just seems ridiculous, right? Here's the thing with good line, right? If it's not nicked, this shit is strong. Like, you can catch giant fish in like, things have to go your way, right? Like, you kind of have to get lucky and the fish has to not go to that snag or, you know, not run to that current, right? Because you don't have a ton of control. It's not like you got a flipping stick and you just haul them in, right? But this light line is incredibly strong. You just got to really watch for nicks. You got to tie a good knot. You got to make sure you're retying often, because 3-pound turns into like 1-pound very quick if you're banging on things or nicking it up, okay? But don't be afraid, try it. Sunline Sniper is great. Sniper Invisible, great. Cigar 18, great. So whatever it is that you guys like, play in those lighter sizes. The other thing with the lighter line is when you're using those smaller finesse baits, like a great hunting, right? It's such a small bait, small bill, that it needs a lighter line to really work properly. If the line is too heavy, then the line just gets in the way and you don't get that real tight wobble or that beautiful little side-to-side glide. Now all of a sudden the line is just kind of pulling it through the water and you're not getting the motion out of the bait that the bait was designed for, which means you're not going to get the strikes either. So downsize as low as you're, you know, brave enough to go. I say just go for it, right? Grow a pair. Use the light line. Right, Jeff?
3-pound or nothing.
Let's do it. We can do it. Okay, let's talk rods really fast. Now, if you look at, say, the Megabass Destroyer P5 line, right? The obvious place to start would be the rod that they call Bait Finesse, right? I mean, it makes sense. This is the Bait Finesse system, and this is the Bait Finesse rod, right? But this guy is an F3, right? Which is still kind of like a medium light rod. So this is a great all-around like soft plastics rod, especially like you don't necessarily need a BFS reel. You could do like a Aldebaran on there. You could do a Steve CT. You could just do a smaller profile reel. You could put some 8-pound or 10-pound or 12-pound. You could fish lighter finesse plastics on bigger water, right? So the Bait Finesse rod for me is really like a big water bait finesse rod, not like a true BFS style rod. So when I'm thinking BFS style, I'm thinking light line, F0, F1, F2, really bendy to throw all these smaller baits that we were talking about. So here's where I generally start. So this is my absolute favorite BFS rod. This is the Megabass Triza ALO. Okay, so this is an F0 6.3. Okay, so F0 means it's like ultra light, right? So you can see this guy is super bendy, right? But what's cool about the Trizas are beautiful, right? You got the hand carved wood, you got all these dope lockdowns, you got hand painted stuff on it. I mean, it looks sick, right? Trizas are multi-piece, so they're a 3-piece rod. So if I want to backpack in, I want to hike in, I want to just throw something in my car and not have it in the way. You know, these things break down easily, they fit in a sock, and they're just really easy to store and to pack. Now, after they're attached, the Trizas are very special rods. They're incredibly strong, and they have great actions. This ALO is money for throwing those smallest hard baits that we talked about. So that really light, 1.5 to 3.5, 4 gram stuff. This rod handles it beautifully. It's got plenty of bend, so it loads up great. And then it's got plenty of bend to keep the fish pinned so that you can land a lot. So this is one, I mean, if you're gonna have one rod, do a lot of different things. I love this rod, the ALO from Megabass and the Triza lineup. I know you guys are gonna love it. You're gonna be in that $350 price range here. So it's just a beautiful performance rod. Definitely consider that one. Another one that I use a lot is in the Destroyer P5. Now it's hard not to love P5 because they don't weigh anything, they're super light. But this is one that's always with me. This is the Cliffhanger Thrilling, or as the bad English pronunciation is here, the Cliffhanger Thrilling, okay? But this is a dope rod because it's F2 and it's 6 foot, so it's short again, so it's easy to fish from tight quarters and from shore. But this is more of a traditional, like, faster action. So it's got this nice soft tip to it, but then it's nice and powerful down here through the rest of the rod. So for the soft plastics, it's brilliant. It's so sensitive. It's every bit as sensitive as an NRX or any of the higher end sensitivity rods that you're gonna use. So it's a great one for your soft plastics fishing. So highly recommend this. The other rod in the P5 lineup that's great for hard baits is the Pop X stick. Okay, so the Pop X stick is gonna have more of that ALO bend through the middle, great reaction bait rod. So you're gonna have to kind of choose, do you wanna have 2 rods like I do, where I have my reaction rod and my soft plastic, or do you want one rod that kind of does a bunch of shit? And if you go with the one rod, you're gonna have to choose, do you want the rod to be bendier, right? So more designed for the hard baits, but they could also do soft plastic, or do you want the rod to be a little bit faster, so it's gonna be beautifully at home with soft plastics, but it could also do the hard baits as well. So those are just kind of decisions you guys are gonna have to make. Now, if you don't wanna jump into that $450, $500 range, there are a couple of rods in the Japan Destroyer carbon heads that are beautiful as well. So this is an F160. This is the Elise. So this is going to have that beautiful, kind of that same taper as a Pop X stick or that ALO. It's gonna have that nice bend through that midsection there, right? So it's gonna have that nice soft taper for throwing those hard baits. And then they also make that same cliffhanger rod, the F260. So again, that's going to give you that nice, beautiful kind of fast tip, and it'll allow you to load some of the lighter baits, but then nice strong power down through the midsection. You can even see that, you know, when Megabass builds these rods, they know that you're going to be doing a lot of different things, right? So, you know, its sweet spot is right in that finesse plastic and hard bait, right? So they're all designed to do multi-purpose. It's just going to depend on you if you prefer a faster rod or a softer rod. All right, guys, so that is a look at the gear that we use. Now, the next step in this is showing you how to apply it. So Jeff and I are going to take this gear, everything we just talked about, we're going to go out on the water and we're going to shoot another episode so you can see exactly how we apply it. How are we casting? What are the angles? How are we fighting the fish? Because there's so many little variables that are going to be really important to you guys having a lot of success with BFS fishing. So hopefully this was, you know, informative and gives you guys a starting point. If you have any questions on any of the gear, please drop us the question down below in the comments and we will get to it. Jeff will leave links to all of these products down below, so if you want to look at any of them closer, you can. So, you ready to hit the water, Jeff?
Yeah, let's get out of here and let's go catch some fish.
All right, so we're going to go hit the water. Stay tuned for part 2, I guess we could call it, of BFS fishing, and we'll show you guys how to apply all this stuff on the river, lake, stream, whatever it is you're fishing. So until next time, peace. Let's go fishing, Jeff.